Hare Krishna, good morning, everybody. We'll start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I will share my screen. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, texts 56 through 61, I think it is. Okay, let's start with the translation. Translation of text 56. Let me just see. Okay. So we're in the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. And fun fact before we begin is that I just heard that since this is the first class we're having in Kartik in this year, 2021, Kartik is the month where Dhruva Maharaj saw Lord Vishnu. I had never realized that, so I was like, oh, this is sweet. We're studying this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj and now in Kartik. So translation to text 56. It is possible to worship a form of the Lord made of physical elements, such as earth, water, pulp, wood, and metal. In the forest, one can make a form with no more than earth and water and worship him according to the above principles. A devotee who has full control over his self should be very sober and peaceful, and must be satisfied simply with eating whatever fruits and vegetables are available in the forest. Text 57, translation. My dear Dhruva, besides worshiping the deity and chanting the mantra 3 times a day, you should meditate upon the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different incarnations, as exhibited by his supreme will and personal potencies. Text 58. One should follow in the footsteps of previous devotees regarding how to worship the Supreme Lord with the prescribed paraphernalia. Or one should offer worship within the heart by reciting the mantra to the Personality of Godhead, who is non-different from the mantra. 59 through 60. Anyone who thus engages in the devotional service of the Lord, seriously and sincerely, with his mind, words, and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If a devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation from the material world, he is awarded these results. Text 61. If one is very serious about liberation, he must stick to the process of transcendental loving service, engaging 24 hours a day in the highest stage of ecstasy. And he must certainly be aloof from all activities of sense gratification. So today I would like to share some thoughts on text 56. So I'll read the Sanskrit translation and purport. Labdva dravyamayim archam kshityam vadishu varchayet abritatma manishanto yatavan mitavan yabuk. Translation again. It is possible to worship a form of the Lord made of physical elements such as earth, water, pulp, wood, and metal. In the forest, one can make a form with no more than earth and water and worship him according to the above principles. A devotee who has full control over his self should be very sober and peaceful and must be satisfied simply with eating whatever fruits and vegetables are available in the forest. Purport. It is essential for a devotee to worship the form of the Lord and not only meditate upon the form of the Lord within his mind with the chanting of the mantra given by the spiritual master. The worship of the form must be present. The impersonalist takes unnecessary trouble to meditate upon or worship something impersonal, and the path is very precarious. We are not advised to follow the impersonalist way of meditating on or worshiping the Lord. Dhruva Maharaj was advised to worship a form made of earth and water, because in the jungle, it is not possible to have a form made of metal, wood, or stone. The best process is to take earth mixed with water and make a form of the Lord and worship him. The devotee should not be anxious about cooking food. Whatever is available in the forest or in the city among the fruit and vegetable groups should be offered to the deity, and the devotee should be satisfied eating that. He should not be anxious to have very palatable dishes. Of course, wherever it is possible, one should offer the deities the best foodstuffs, prepared within the category of fruits and vegetables, cooked or uncooked. The important factor is that the devotee should be regulated, mita bhuk. That is one of the good qualifications of a devotee. He should not hanker to satisfy the tongue with a particular kind of foodstuff. He should be satisfied to eat whatever prasad is available by the grace of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshatarine. So I would like to share a few things on the topic of deity worship. Actually, that's what this series of verses kind of popped out to me. Okay, deity worship. Quite a daunting task when I initially thought, okay, I'm going to be speaking about deity worship. But yeah, let's see how it unfolds. It's quite interesting in this verse. Narada Muni's saying that it's like, wow, you can make deities out of whatever materials you have on hand. This is pretty amazing. And then it made me think about actually as a kid how I had several deities of my own that I had made. I don't know if some of you had that experience. So in my home, before I was born, my father has been worshiping Giriraj Govardhan. And I remember at one point I took Play-Doh and I made my own Giriraj that looked exactly like the one we have here in our home. And I had a sequin like peacock feather that was green, and I would literally stick it in his head to like put his peacock feather on. It stuck it right in his head and put in his smile, and made of different colors in his eyes, because that's how I'd seen the worship being done. It's putting on the eyes and everything, and smile and earrings. And then another time, Kalakanta Prabhu's family and my family, we had traveled to Jagannath Puri together. And so his daughter Leela and I, we bought these shells from the ocean there. And they weren't like, the kind broken that you might find on the beach here or something. They were like intact, almost to the point where if it had a hole, it could have been like a conch shell, but they were really nice and shiny. And we named them Shellagram Sheilas. And I mean, I kept my shellagram for a long time afterwards, I remember, but we would, take like the laundry detergent they have in India and like scrub them with like a toothbrush. And like we made an altar and we would worship them fully as our Sheilas. So I was just thinking about how children do these things, enacting what they've seen being done in the home or at the temple. And we all smile and go, "Oh, that's so cute," But it's really why we're feeling so lovingly towards hearing these things that children do, is because they have such sweet sincerity when they do these things. And initially, it may be like, okay, that's sweet, but it's really what's attractive is that sincerity. And really, that's all that's needed from us as adults also. Is that sincerity. In Nectar of Devotion, chapter 14, Srila Prabhupada writes, devotional service is dependent on nothing other than the sentiment or desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity. So I just wanted to follow Srila Prabhupada's points that he made in the purport for text 56 and kind of use that as a framework for discussing some points today about number one, the why of Deity worship, number two, several simple requirements, so to speak, on the consciousness level for Deity worship, and then number three, the liberalities of Archana, Deity service. So in our line, it's actually amazing how much Deity service is stressed and how much of a core practice it is for our spiritual life. Out of the 64 items of devotional service, Rupa Goswami, he boils it down for us to 5 most potent forms of devotional service. And I'll give a verse here that's actually from CC that Mahaprabhu is saying. Sadhu Sangha Namakirtan Bhagavata Shravan Mathura Vasa Srimurtira Shraddhaya Sevan. One should associate with the devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. So Rupa Goswami explains how performing any one of these 5 in itself, just alone, can lead to complete perfection and bring ecstasy even for the beginning devotee. So potent they are, and Deity worship is included in those 5. And these 5 forms are so important for us to be attached to that Srila Prabhupada has incorporated all of them into the morning program. So he's given us that chance to perform all 5 and become attached to all or at least one of them. And in that way, we can perfect our lives. So we see that Prabhupada has said that, every temple is the holy dham. So we can be, living there, so to speak. I mean, of course, back in the day, devotees used to actually live at the temple. But now we've just, by moving and living around the temple, created many more holy places, because devotees' homes are holy places in themselves, with the deities on the altar and the Bhagavatam in the home. So yeah, we can check that one off, living in the holy dham. And so that's there for the morning program. Then we worship the forms of the Lord in their deity form by doing kirtan and arti in the morning program. Then, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam is recited and discussed daily at the morning program. We have opportunities to serve the Vaishnavas each morning in many different ways. And of course, we chant Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada has really given us that packed program to make sure that we have the opportunity to become attached to Krishna in this way. There are many reasons why Deity worship is stressed so much, and Srila Prabhupada has addressed some of them in the purport today that we just read. So if we take a look at it, he's almost warning us not to only meditate upon the form of the Lord within the mind. That was the first sentence. Because I guess he knows that we need our senses engaged. And so he's saying, it's important to have the form of the Lord in front of you, to be able to worship and develop that relationship with, and see and touch and, be right there. Because then he says on the opposite side, it's dangerous, because impersonalists are specifically meditating on something that doesn't have a form. And so this deity worship really sets us apart from impersonalism. We know in Srila Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, he's glorified for delivering the Western countries, which are full of impersonalism. So we know right away, impersonalism, first day you join, that that's not what we're about. And deity worship really strongly says Krishna is a person. He is here, So that's a very important aspect of deity worship. A reason why we have deity worship. Krishna comes to enable us to give that kind of service. Also in a letter to Kirtananda Swami, Srila Prabhupada wrote, "Decorate the deity as nicely as possible with nice flowers and dress. You will forget all other false beauty." So deity worship really purifies our mind and our consciousness. And the lust in our hearts have the opportunity to then turn to love for the Lord through that worship. And lastly, one of my personal favorite benefits or purposes or reasons for Deity worship is that we can develop our personal relationship with the Lord. And there are limitless pastimes about the relationship between deities and their pujaris. And why limitless? Because they're happening even today. You just have to find those people who've been doing service for decades, and you'll find them and they can tell you so many different pastimes with them and the deities. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the modern day pastimes of the deities, the Jagannath deities at Rajpur and Mayapur, as well as Lord Nrsingadev in Mayapur, and these amazing pastimes that happen. I just wanted to share one from the Jagannath Mandir in Mayapur. I was reading that when the property was first being handed over to ISKCON for the deities to be worshipped and taken over by ISKCON devotees, Jayapataka Maharaj had instructed, not to start any kind of worship kind of with the deities till all the deeds were signed and things were fully legally in ISKCON's name. But he wasn't aware there was actually already Pujari there who had been cooking for Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra already. So when this devotee heard Maharaj's instruction, he was like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. So he stopped cooking for them. He didn't do the opulent cooking that he was doing. And then he had a dream that next day he went into the altar room and opened the doors, and Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra were gone. So he frantically leaves the temple, runs out, and he sees Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra just like leaving Rajpur. And he's like, wait, Jagannath, just wait. Like, where are you going? You can't leave. And they said, well, we don't get nice prashadam here. We get nice prashadam at Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. We're going over there. So, because we're not getting any nice prashadam here, there we know we'll get prashadam, or bulgur or whatever. And so, the devotee woke up, and obviously this pastime was related to Jayapataka Maharaj. And he said, well, I didn't know that this was already happening. I wouldn't have told you that way. His point was he didn't want to start a high standard of worship until everything was legally in place. But he said, no, of course, now you have to go back to this opulent cooking. And so in that way, the opulent cooking started for Jagannath and Baladev and Subhadra once again. There's so many sweet pastimes like this, and especially those deities. I've heard personally from devotees that they're very reciprocative and they like to bargain a little bit. You say, like, Jagannath, this is my desire. If you so desire, this is what I would like. And if you can fulfill this desire, this is how I can increase my devotion to you and my service to you. And so these particular deities I've heard are very, very reciprocative. So yeah, why would we not want to have deity worship? So these are just a few points on the why of deity worship. As far as tackling like the requirements, I have a different angle at looking at them. So yeah, it's a little different. So in the verse we read today, Dhruva Maharaj, he's being instructed to follow in the path of those before him as far as deity worship. And so when we take this instruction to our own practice, there are a million mantras to chant, rules and regulations to follow, proper and improper ways of performing the service. So for those kind of guidelines, I'd like to direct you all to the Pancharatra Pradipa, because that's not what we're going to focus on today. It's such a vast topic. So I'm the kind of person that I like to boil things down to essentials so that I can feel like the service is attainable. And if I can handle that, then I'll look deeper into the details. So I just wanted to share with you a few words, just words that speak to the requirements or kind of like the consciousness level for us in deity worship, just a few. And yeah, I'd like you all to be thinking about it as well on your own end, what words come to you. So these are some words that I came across when just researching this topic, and some that I've already shared actually earlier in this discussion. Prayer, regulation, as Prabhupada said in the Purport Mita book, faith, veneration, and cleanliness. So I'll let that percolate for all of you, and I won't say much more on the requirements. Then to the last point on the generous nature of this form of devotional service. Like Leela explained so clearly in last week's discussion, that the purpose of all these rules and regulations is to remember Krishna and never forget him. So we actually see so many times how the love of the devotee really surpasses what should and shouldn't be done, as far as, Deity worship even. And but just Prabhupada actually in one of the purports in the series of verses today mentions that there are such liberalities in devotional service. So, earlier in the purport today, he said we should not just meditate in the mind, there should be a physical form. But also in another purport, he references the pastime of the Brahmana from Nectar of Devotion. And so we see here that there also can be this room for us to be able to be flexible, I guess, maybe. I don't know what the word is. Anyway, so once there was a Brahmana, and he was impoverished. He didn't have very much, but he just saw it as the grace of the Lord. And he was very happy doing what service he could. And he would go often and listen to discussions by the saints on different topics, spiritual topics. And so once he heard that if you don't have a lot and you don't have many things that you can do as far as deity worship, one can offer things within the mind, and that's just as good. Just like I know some devotees that when you're traveling, and say if it's like a really long flight or travel that you're on, they'll do their deity worship through Manasa Puja. So they'll do the whole puja, but it's just in the mind because you're on the plane and you don't have any facility to be bathing your deities and this and that, especially for installed deities or like your or Shalagram that have to be worshipped every day. So yeah, this Brahmin was told that, okay, things can be done in the mind as well. So he was very happy to hear that. And then right away, he started a whole practice of every morning mentally going to all the sacred rivers, collecting water, offering it to the Lord, preparing nice, offerings. And so he went on like this for years. And one day he was meditating that he was making some sweet rice. And Prabhupada writes sweetly that sweet rice, it tastes very good when it is cool, not hot. So that's how it should be taken. And so the Brahmana wanted to make sure that it was cool enough so the Lord could enjoy it. So he just, touched it with his finger, but it was still so hot that he burnt his finger in his meditation. And so his meditation broke because that was such an intense experience of burning. And he looks down and his finger in reality is actually burnt. So the potent nature of this meditation, he was so fixed. It wasn't something that he was just imagining. His devotion was so much there that, Krishna reciprocated with him that, yes, this is really, I am taking your service. It's here, it's true. So yeah, Prabhupada says, such are the liberal and potent facilities in the process of devotional service. It's so sweet because it helps. It just helps because deity worship can sometimes feel a little overwhelming, but I'll get to that later. I won't speak too much. So yeah, today, basically, I touched on a few things, kind of the why of deity worship, several consciousness level requirements, and the liberalities also. So I just wanted to finish with this verse by Srila Rupa Goswami. He says, "My dear friend, if you still have any desire to enjoy the company of your friends within this material world, then don't look upon the form of Krishna, who is standing on the bank of Keshigat. He is known as Govinda, and his eyes are very enchanting. He is playing upon his flute, and on his head there is a peacock feather, and his whole body is illuminated by the moonlight in the sky." So Rupa Goswami here is saying that we simply have to become attached to the deity of Krishna, and all other nonsense, as Prabhupada says, will be forgotten. So this topic really is so vast, and if each one of us here today were to be given the topic, you have to speak on deity worship, I'm sure we could all come up with different angles and new material. It's just so, so vast. And I know that just those words, deity worship, can bring up a lot for devotees. And so I just wanted to open up the discussion to hear from you what you were thinking kind of this whole time on the topic of deity worship. So like what comes up for you when someone says deity worship? Because for some, that is their form of expressing love to the Lord. And for others, maybe not so much. I was always encouraged from very young, because we had so many deities growing up somehow. And somehow as an early teen, the service of taking care of them was given to me. I don't know how. Like my father would do the main Giraj Puja, but somehow the other dressing of the deities was given to me, that service. And the main thing that like my parents would always say is like, just regulation is the important thing. So I would make sure that within a month I had dressed all the deities because there were so many. So each weekend I would dress one set of deities. So like that was my feeling of regulation. But as far as mantras and all this stuff, like that would have been too overwhelming for me. And they were always like, yeah, no, just, they're home deities, So I was to encourage to develop that love so that I wouldn't become overwhelmed. But maybe, I don't know, I just feel like I can do that, but I've shied away so much from temple deity worship because it just feels so much awe and reverence to the point where, you feel like if there's so many experienced people and like, if you don't do this right this way, then there's like certain patterns and ways you're supposed to do things that for me, I've had the opportunity a few times, okay, you get trained, but it ends up kind of never working out because I have that already in me, kind of like, this is too much. Like, I can't make a mistake here. This is, the Lord's, like that. I can do my home worship because my deities are, merciful. But so there's just many thoughts that I know you all can be having about this topic because of our experiences. And so whatever they may be, positive, negative, or, one way or the other, I thought we could just kind of discuss that a little bit today. But thank you all for listening so kindly, and I'd like to hear from all of you now.